Erik, thank you so much for being on the program. I just had to sort of like build out what we're going to talk about today because I believe we're at the precipice here. What do you make of this American missile attack into Russia from Ukraine?
So look, the ATACMS missile is effectively a Scud. It is a highly accurate modern American version of a Scud missile, which you've probably heard about from the Iraq days already back in 1991. The fact is the Ukrainians have longer range drones and bigger payload weapon systems that they themselves have launched with some success inside of Russia. Is very unnecessarily provocative. The fact that it's a high-end weapon system made in America at great cost to be firing them. I don't think it's going to trigger a nuclear response from the Russians. But to me, it's like a drowning person grabbing anything on their way down of a dying, failing administration to try to really snatch any semblance of incremental victory from a complete and total disaster of this neocon war for the last few years. The other downside is every other system that the U.S. has exposed in Ukraine has, within a matter of weeks, been rendered impotent by very capable Russian electronic warfare jamming. They do a very good job of jamming the navigation and blinding our systems so that our stuff doesn't work. So we have hundreds of billions of dollars of investment in lots of stuff that the Pentagon has paid. And it's really not in that high a demand in Ukraine because it's been, like I said, been rendered useless. The Iranians have been shooting hundreds and hundreds of weapon systems and effectively an ally in this of Russia against our ships in the Red Sea. Fortunately, they haven't hit anything yet. Don't know the success of these ATACMS missiles or not. But again, this is an unnecessarily stupid move by the Biden administration. What President Trump should do is get on his airplane and fly to Baku, Azerbaijan, where there is the COP29 conference, truly neutral territory. I bet you Putin or a senior Russian would show up. It would be an amazing show of meeting them halfway to say, listen, just hang on, deal with the stupidity in Washington, but the United States is about peace. That would be a bold move, or send J.D. Vance or someone there to say the clowns in Washington don't really represent the United States anymore, although they have, unfortunately, the constitutional authority until noon on January 20.
It boggles the mind that after losing in a landslide, Joe Biden, who has prevented American missiles and munitions from being driven deep into the heart of Russia, does this on his way out. It seems like sabotage. Does it seem like sabotage to you, as though they're actively attempting to create forever war with Russia, Erik?
Look, these are decisions made by people that don't have to suffer the consequences of their bad decisions. And it's in keeping with the entire Biden administration of complete failure of military leadership, from the debacle in Afghanistan to the debacle in the Red Sea to Gaza and Lebanon and now this Ukraine fight. It's just failure after failure. And it speaks to a lack of health of our society, that our elites do not bear the consequences of their bad decisions in forever wars. You know, in the Roman Empire, at the Battle of Cannae, probably the single biggest loss of life of the empire ever, they lost 80,000 people. And the next month, when the Roman Senate met, 40% of the people weren't there. Why? Because the Roman senators actually went to battle and perished in battle and lived with the consequences made in the battlefield. The idiot Washington elites don't have to live with that decision anymore. And that's why they keep sending people off to die. It's why we had 20 years of forever war without ever resolution, because they kind of do it. It's a Comic-Con version of war. Not, hey, we're here to win and get out of our way, and we will smash the hell out of you if you oppose us. It's all kind of a half-baked war, and it's unacceptable. That's clearly what Trump is against.
It's clearly just rising the portfolios of the Cheneys and the great neocon families of this country. It's so transparent, Eric, that they're sending these weapon systems that don't function over there. They're making points on their portfolio every time Ukrainians are slaughtered in this war, and they're perpetuating it. It's utterly demonic, and they're able to kill the flower of Ukraine. They're able to destroy the youths of both Russia and Ukraine in the process and get rich doing it. It's sick.
Right. This is a war of attrition, and it's just bad math because Ukraine is now losing more people per day than they can even grab off the streets of Ukraine to try to replenish themselves. So the sooner they end this, the better. But the other real guilty party here is Congress. Both parties in Congress, the people that sit in the Defense Appropriations Committee that take all kinds of money from the military-industrial complex, who effectively pays almost a brigade worth, thousands of lobbyists that sprinkle money in those congressional pockets to spend more money and to perpetuate this very, very unhealthy act that we've been doing, and that must stop.
I would like to have you unpack a little bit the sort of maybe a Yalta conference, right, that people would be calling for. Donald Trump saying in 24 hours he's going to bring Putin and Zelensky together. I have suggested on this program to do it over Thanksgiving. You can explain the Thanksgiving tradition to Putin and Zelensky. Have it at Mar-a-Lago. I know they have a great Thanksgiving spread at Mar-a-Lago. You're saying fly to Azerbaijan. Send an emissary from the new administration to Azerbaijan. Is this your recommendation?
Yes, there's actually a global climate conference there now. I think even the way back for Russia. Look, long term, it has always been the strategic interest of the United States to keep German industry from combining with Russian resources. All we've done with this stupid war is push Russian resources into a subservient role with the Chinese Communist Party. That is our main enemy. So the sooner we can break that, the better. And I think it is in the long term. Europe does belong. Russia belongs in a much less contentious relationship with Europe. America has way more in common with Russia than we do with China or Japan or Korea or India for that matter, and always has. And they don't have to be our best friends. We can be frenemies, but we don't have to have the level of provocation. And it's a sad practice that's been going on for the last few years.
Eric, I know you've seen the front lines in Iraq, Afghanistan, and some of the American incursions all around the world. You've probably thought and dreamed for a long period of time as to how peace should have happened in Afghanistan. I know that you have the ear of some of the highest levels of the new Trump administration. How would you like to see peace happen in Ukraine?
What the Russians have demanded was they wanted to govern the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and obviously they view Crimea is already theirs, but they want to govern those other areas for the next 10 or 20 years and then have a plebiscite. Fine. If we freeze the lines kind of North-South Korea style, straighten them up, and let Ukraine go back to demographically reproducing themselves because it's a wrecked society now, that's what should happen. And look, you're not going to have an unconditional surrender, a moment on the battleship Missouri in Tokyo Harbor. It's not going to happen against Russia. And all you're doing now is you're ruining the next generations of Ukrainian men. And right now, you're entering a particularly dangerous time because the fields are frozen, and now it's possible to start maneuvering. So you got a window of extreme danger that they need to stop this war. Because there's two times you can maneuver, right? In the dry of summer across a dry field with tanks, and of course when it's frozen very, very hard. And that's what you're going to have for the next 2 or 3 months. And if you're not careful, a significant Russian breakthrough, and there has been some in the last few weeks, could literally take everything east of the Dnieper River. And if Ukraine takes Odessa, then it's really not even a viable country anymore because they have no port to export from. So it's like I said, let the Russians manage those territories they've captured. Yes, it sucks to be Ukraine. This whole thing sucks. but an ugly peace is better than a very, very hot war where you continue to lose people. Make Odessa an international city, an international port that will export from both countries, and then just compete. Look at South Korean governance and what an economic miracle South Korea is versus North Korean communism, socialism. Pretty clear which economy people want to be part of. That's what the ultimate competition of this should be.
An ugly peace is better than a hot war. What a perfect way to say that. However, the Biden regime has started hot wars. The entire world sort of went to shambles under the leadership of this regime. How do you get it back? How do you pull back from the brink? Right? My ultimate question is who's profiting and why? Right? Like why so much chaos around the world? It doesn't seem to be in the interest of really anyone, not in the nations that are fighting, not in the people of America who voted for peace. Why does this continue, and how do we stop it, Erik?
I talked to someone that had been at all the different BRICS summits, okay, the Brazil, Russia, India, China Economic Coalition. And they said the previous summits was very much a parity between Putin and Xi of China. But this last one that they had just, 6 weeks ago in Russia, it was an imbalance, and Xi was clearly on top and in the dominant position. That is really bad. That is not what we want, and we do not want to fight any kind of alliance or have a contention. We definitely don't want to fight with a combined Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. That's a bad day for the United States of America. So again, settle this war, get Russia back to trading with the West, with Europe, and isolate the Chinese Communist Party. That is in our national interest, which in our national interest vastly exceeds the border security interests of Ukraine. Full stop.
Yes. Finally, some clarity here. Very quickly, Erik, I wanted to chat with you about deportations here in America. I know that you've sounded off on social media about your thoughts on that, how that could be accomplished. Many people are now talking through the logistics of what a full-scale mass deportation would look like. Can you give me your thoughts?
Well, you see the bureaucracy immediately pushing back, saying, "Well, it's impossible, or it's going to cost $100,000 per deportee," and that's just nonsense. And I think back to every congressional hearing that I was ever called to in the Blackwater days, where we were called to compare what our price was versus what the government's price was, and we weren't even in the same universe. And so I am confident the private sector can do the location, the assist in the detention, and especially the expensive part, which is the actual deportation, the management of aircraft, all the rest. The private sector can once again rally and provide cost-effective solutions under constitutional authority, and do it in a proper way. There are 1.8 million illegals that have final deportation orders already issued by the courts that have all those 1.8 have committed crimes while here illegally in the United States, and they're still on the loose, moving around our communities. That is such a no-brainer to find them and move them out. It's ridiculous. And so when the president wants that capability, it's available.
It's been so frustrating because the private sector moved them into this country. Private airlines brought them here through the CBP One app. NGOs coordinated for years to create the infrastructure and capacity building to bring people through the Darien Gap to come here. And so you're saying that the private sector that got them here, private sector can get them home.
Yeah, and I'll put my private sector against that private sector. So look, it was not just organized crime that got them here; it's industrialized crime, and so there's a lot of professional logistics capabilities and a lot of latent talent that can be marshaled when the president needs it. And Tom Gorman, the border czar, they have to know that the private sector is ready to go when they are.
Yeah, it is wonderful to hear. It'd be so excellent to see the various GWAT veterans and people that we know that have the tactical capacity to protect this country once again, and especially against the cartels. In closing here, Erik, how would you dismantle the cartels? They seem to operate with impunity on our southern border. We've seen it ourselves in Arizona. We had cartel members wave at our documentary cameras and flip us off. They care so little about that. And then they fired on a Border Patrol agent the day after we were there. So I would really like to see these people wiped off the face of the earth. How would you do it?
So, but first answer on deportation, there's a lot of simple steps the federal government can take that can make it an unpleasant place to remain here illegally. And self-deportation should be the first and best option to say, listen, you came here illegally, leave now and you'll have a chance to come back. But if we catch you, you will never be granted any kind of status here, ever. And I think you'd see a lot of people self-deport, which is great. As for the cartels, treating it like a bounty system is better. Look, the United States has invaded Mexico twice. We do not need to do it a third time. And, Pancho Villa in the early 1900s and 1845, right? From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. We don't need to do that again. But if you put incentives out for Mexican authorities and the privateering model, you can put a lot of very unpleasant pressure on the cartels to choose a different line of work.
So bounties,
we'll leave it at that.
Bounties and special teams throughout Mexico. Okay. Create the incentives, man. It's amazing how quickly the carrot and the stick works when you have the right government playing for the people. So Erik Prince is one of the single best and most important voices from the outside right now for what's actually happening on the inside. Must follow him on X. 500,000 Americans do. Make sure that you are locked in with one of the men who's actually trying to create peace in this world, and has done so, actually, with his own work, not just talking about it on podcasts, but like literally went out and did it. Erik, you are the man.
Thanks, Benny. Cheers.
Cheers.